Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first public meeting of the Patapsco Regional Greenway from Sykesville to McKeldin area of the Patapsco Valley State Park. My name is Keith Kacharik, and I am a transportation planner at the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, and I am the project manager for this segment of the Greenway. We started this process of developing 30% design plans in January, and we anticipate completion by the end of this year. So we're about halfway through the process right now, and we're right on schedule with where we want to be. We have a very exciting presentation for you tonight that we show our progress to date. I think you're really going to enjoy what we have done, and we hope to get some good feedback from everybody. Just a few quick housekeeping items to go over before we get started. First, I wanted to let everybody know that this meeting is going to be recorded. This allows us to make sure we capture everybody's questions and comments accurately. I also would ask if you could keep your devices on mute unless you're speaking. That'll help us ensure that we can hear everybody that's talking at all times, and it will also help to eliminate any kind of background noise that might come through if you aren't muted. And finally, during the presentation, probably the easiest way to communicate with us is, if you have any questions, is to go through the chat box. So just type your name or type your questions in, and we'll be happy to answer them throughout the presentation or in one of the breakout sessions. At this time, I'd like to take a minute to recognize a couple of our elected officials. Carroll County Board of County Commissioners and Chair of the Board of the Directors of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board, or BRTB, Mr. Steve Wantz, and Sykesville Mayor Stacy Link. I'd like to thank them for their dedication and their support. I'd also like to take a few minutes to introduce some of the key members of our team. Many of whom you'll get an opportunity to interact with later this evening during our breakout sessions. From the Baltimore Metropolitan Council, Ms. Regina Aris, Ms. Charlene Mingus, Ms. Monica Haynes Benkeda, and Mr. Bala Okundi. And from our consultant team, and really the ones that deserve the bulk of the credit for putting this presentation together, they've done all the background research, field investigations, and put together the exceptional story map that you're going to see shortly. So our project manager is Ms. Melissa Miklas, and then we also have Mr. Eric Crawford, Mr. Colin Hodges, Mr. Nathan George, and Mr. Tim Corbin with us tonight. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Melissa and Eric, who are going to take you through tonight's activities and presentation. So Melissa, this is all yours.
All right. Thanks, Keith. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I know I think it was a beautiful day out there. I didn't get out there that much, so sorry for keeping you from it. We are going to keep this meeting on time tonight as promised. So I've got a pretty strict schedule here and we're going to stick to it. If we wrap up early, that's fantastic, but want to make sure you all can get back to your families and off to dinner and all you need to do this evening. So just as a reminder, this meeting is going to be recorded. Thank you for participating with us. I think you all know that you have a little bit of control over your mute and unmute, which we will use more when we get into our breakout rooms. And we're looking forward to hearing from you all. But while we're presenting or while your fellow community members are chatting, if you wouldn't mind just being a little bit mindful of your mute, that would be fantastic. And then, like Keith said, you can feel free to use the chat as we're going through here and ask us some questions. If we don't get to your questions tonight, we'll be kind of collecting everything and posting something on our project website. So look forward to that. So we're going to let you know also that we're in this great tool where you've got a few different ways that you can interact with us. So the Zoom chat is what we just brought up. You're also welcome to, if you have a comment or you want to ask a question, you can send an email to m503@publicinput.com. That's M like Mike, 503 at publicinput.com. Or you can text, because we're getting fancy now with our public input, you can text M503 to 73224. So text in M503, that's M like Mike, to 73224. So if you're not interacting with us tonight, or you've got a question for later, or you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've got a burning desire to email something to Keith, there's a few different ways that you can contact us. So you can email Keith, and his email address, for those of you on the phone who might not be able to see my screen, his email is KUCHAREK @baltometro.org. So one more time, it's KUCHAREK @baltometro.org. You can also visit our project website, which is publicinput.com/04267. Again, publicinput.com/04267. And then one more, because we're getting super fancy now, you can also call in and leave us a voicemail if that is more comfortable for you. And we'll be listening to all of those comments, and those are all transcribed for us. So that number to call into is 855-925-2801, and you'll dial extension 7772. So in case I went a little too fast for you, that phone number is 855-925-2801 and extension 7772, and leave us a voicemail. So we look forward to hearing from you all in all of those ways. Hopefully that works for everybody, and everyone has a chance to say hello and comment and reach out to us. All right, so let's get into this tonight. So here's our agenda for tonight. We have a project overview for you all. For those of you who may not be super familiar with the project, and for those of you who are, just enjoy the show one more time. And we're going to talk a little bit about users and context. So who is using our trail? Where is this trail set? And how does that affect our design? We're going to chat a little bit about all the considerations, all of the layers of information that we're thinking about when we're planning for and designing a trail. And then we're going to look at alternatives. So that's really where you guys come in tonight. Is we've got a couple options here, and it's really critical for you all to give us some feedback and let us know what you think. Whole point of this meeting. So we'll have 2 breakout sessions tonight. We'll be looking at what we're calling the Sykesville portion, and then looking at the portion through the park. And then we'll share some next steps with you all, and then we will release you back to your lives. So let's get started and look at this project overview. So if you all are familiar with the Patapsco Regional Greenway, you'll know that this is a bigger project. So there was a planning process that happened, and there's this great vision for a trail that's going to connect all the way from Sykesville into Baltimore City and the Inner Harbor. So that's a lot to tackle. That's a big trail. There's a lot going on, a lot of stakeholders. And so we really kind of segment this out into smaller studies. So the part that we are talking about tonight is just the section that is going from Sykesville through Patapsco Park to the McKeldin area. So if you're looking at my screen, it's where you see that gray box. So that's what we're talking about tonight. And our goal for this project that we're in right now is to get to 30% design. And so what that really means is that we're refining our alternatives. We're picking that line that we're going to follow, but there's going to be plenty more of opportunities for you to get involved and provide feedback as it goes through the design process all the way to 100% and then into construction. So I apologize for those of you who are super excited and want us to put a shovel in the ground tomorrow, but we're really just, by December, we'll be getting to 30% design. So just zooming in a little bit on our area here, you're going to see a lot of maps tonight. And so I'll orient you a little bit right now. So Main Street in Sykesville, if you can see the hand on my screen, is kind of on the left side. And so our goal is to kind of get from Main Street into Freedom Park, and then across Patapsco Park, across Marysville Road into the McKeldin area. So you see this purple line on this map right now. And this purple line, when you do a big planning study, the map that I showed you from Sykesville to the Inner Harbor, you draw a line and you're like, hey, we want to go this way. We want to get here. We want to connect these things. And so that's what the purple line is. So our job when we started this project is to figure out, is that purple line in the right place? We need to talk to all of you and figure out, is this the right thing to do? Or do we need a new purple line? Do we need to spur off of this? So that's where you are now, is helping us figure out how to move this purple line to be a little bit more realistic. So tonight, we're going to divide this into two sections, like I said. So section 1 that we'll talk about, and I'll focus on one, is going to be from Sykesville into Freedom Park. And then Eric is going to present most of the information relative to section 2, which is from Freedom Park to the McKeldin area. So 2 different segments, 2 different breakout rooms, because they're a little bit different. And so we'll get to that in a few minutes. So let's talk a little bit about this process. I alluded to this a bit when we started, but when we get that planning document with the purple line, we say, okay, let's dive in. What else do we need to know? So we go through some existing conditions documentation, look at lots of layers of cultural resources. We talk to lots of stakeholders, and then we come up with alternatives. Then we have a public meeting, which is where we are tonight, and get your input. And then we can say, okay, this is our preference right now. This is the alternative that we kind of want to shoot for. So then we do more exploration. We do surveys and geotechnical and kind of dig into the weeds a little bit more. Then we have another public meeting. And so by the end of this process in December, we'll be at that 30% design that I keep talking about. So just, as a reminder, this is our public meeting number 1. We have a story map that we're going to show you in a bit. You may have already seen it. There's a survey and a comment map on the story map, and we're going to leave that open until June 11th. So tell your family, tell your friends, send out the link. Let's get lots of comments back, because we want to make sure that we hear you and read all those comments before we go into selecting this preferred alternative. And then we'll have another public meeting number 2, and we'll invite you all back to that. All right, so how do we start planning for a trail? How do we take that purple line into something that's more refined, right? So where I like to start, I'm a people person. I love people. So I kind of start with who is using the trail, who is building the trail, who is maintaining the trail, who has to take care of this. So we start thinking about, based on the people who might use this and based on where it is, what does that trail start to look like? And so we know that there's folks out there kind of traveling in these areas already. We heard from the equestrian group, and we know that they come down along the river and they go up across the existing bridge along Main Street, and they kind of hang out with their horses and park them up and hang out in town. So we kind of know they have that route, but we don't have a great way to get people who are walking and biking from Freedom Park into downtown. So we're kind of thinking that section 1, the new trail that we're working on, is really focused on people biking and jogging, people with strollers, people who live in town, maybe some visitors. And then our section 2 that Eric is going to talk about is really a lot different, right? So we've got mountain bikers. We do want to accommodate those equestrians. So it makes the surface a little bit different, the experience a little bit different. So it's kind of illustrated right here in this slide. So our section 1, Sykesville downtown, that might be an asphalt path. It's just a little bit of a different feel. It might be adjacent to the roadway. And then, like I said, the users are a little bit different. And then in that section 2 that Eric is going to talk about, we know we're going to have equestrians and people on mountain bikes and people hiking. So we just want to make sure that we're designing the appropriate surface and the appropriate amenities, and making sure that we have signage and rules and regulations that works for the user groups, because that's what's really important, right? So some additional considerations for building trails. We like to say that any of our constraints we can turn into an opportunity. Any challenge is something that we can solve in a creative way. So we've been talking to a lot of stakeholders, and we know that there are some folks out there. We've got bow hunters out there. We have a bow hunting club out there. So we want to make sure that we keep everyone safe. We have lots of equestrians already out there in the league. They have their property out there. So we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable there. There's tons of amazing scenic views There are some historic ruins out there, so we may want to take the trail along and celebrate that and interpret it. So there's just lots of stuff in the mix of considerations as you're diving into trail design. So another thing that we do is we do all of this kind of data mapping as we dig into this. So we look at environmental constraints. Do we have hydric soils where maybe we don't want to build a trail or we might need a bridge? We look at land ownership. So is there an opportunity to kind of use some town-owned land to do something that's going to work really well for our trail in Sykesville? As we're going through the park, we want to make sure we're not getting too close to some private properties because, that might not work for people. They might not want to have that close adjacency. So there's lots of things that we're considering with this alignment, and this data is kind of pushing us in different directions. We also look at cultural resources. So like I was saying, there's a couple of fun ruins out there. And so we need to make the decision, are we going past it, celebrating and interpreting it? Or are we wanting to avoid it because maybe it's not safe and people shouldn't be around it? So we've done this analysis with our archaeologists and our cultural resources staff to see where those opportunities are. And then slopes. This is a big one. I'm sure everyone on the phone has been to Sykesville and probably through the park, and it's a hilly place, right? So when we're talking about slopes, it's a couple different things here. So we want to make things comfortable for our 8 to 80 populations, kids on bikes, people walking, taking a walk after dinner on the Sykesville section. And then when we're in the park, that topography really pushes us around, right? And for a couple different reasons. We want a comfortable journey through the park, so there's that. But we also want to build a sustainable trail. So we want to make sure that we're not just jogging straight down a slope, because what will happen is water will start to run down that and it will rut out, and then we'll have to realign or repair our trail. So that topography, that's something really sensitive that kind of pushes our alignment in the park, and it kind of sometimes makes our decisions for us. The other consideration that we looked at is traffic volume. And you might say, traffic volume, what does that have to do with this trail? Well, it's a little bit about comfort in our Sykesville section. So this red line right here along 32 is kind of the most volume of traffic. And so when we're looking at alternatives, we're thinking, well, shoot, do we really want to be next to that high level of traffic on our trail? I don't know. But we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable and feels safe. So it's just another consideration. The other thing that we look at, we know there's bow hunting in these areas. We know that is kind of a thing in the park, but it's not really new to Patapsco. So there are a bunch of hiking trails that go through our bow hunting areas in the park. We want to be cognizant of this, but also it's not a new thing, like I said. So we want to just think systematically about all of the users and what's happening in the park. And so we want to think systematically about where you can hunt in Howard County and Carroll County and Baltimore County, but also where there's places to hike. So not a new thing, but we really want to be cognizant of it. It's just another reflection of how many users we have out there and things that we need to consider in design. So let's jump into alternatives now. So as I was saying, and you probably have gotten a flavor for this, is that there's a lot of overlapping information. So when we get into the design process, we're thinking about who's using the trail, who's maintaining the trail, who's building the trail. We're thinking about what the context is like, what is around it, what should this trail experience feel like? And then we're thinking about all those layers of existing conditions that I just went through and kind of smashing all that together and doing some analysis and figuring out how all of those elements kind of push and pull our trail and push and pull this alignment around. So the last part of that, which is really important and why you all are here tonight, is your feedback. So the other thing that determines where we go is what you guys think about this, the opportunities that maybe you see that we haven't, the challenges that you know that maybe we don't. So that's really critical to get into tonight. So let's jump into Sykesville. All right, so here we are in Sykesville. And again, here is Main Street. And our goal is to get to Freedom Park. So We've looked at this and we've met with some stakeholders out in the field, and there's a couple things that are kind of pushing and pulling this alignment. So we've kind of come to the conclusion that there's a little bit of a given here on Raincliffe Road to put the trail on the north side. And so a couple of those reasons is some challenging topography. There are some stone walls over here, historic walls. Right now, there's already a sidewalk on the north side of Raincliffe. And there is a development going in right here that we've actually been coordinating with those property owners on that design to incorporate a trail on that property. So it's actually a kind of a cool opportunity. So we kind of feel like that's the given in our alternative. And then our options are really, how do we get to this point, right? And so option one is to come up Sandosky Road right here. And then option two would be to go south along Main Street, go through the park, cross over this road here, and then dip under 32, up a driveway at the church, over an existing bridge that isn't being used by vehicles anymore, and along 32. So let's take a look at those in detail. So Raincliffe Road, right across the street from Freedom Park. When I look at this picture, I think, holy cow, this is a great opportunity for a trail. Look at all this space. So everything has to align with that, utilities, property ownership, et cetera. But, what we started looking at is, this is what that could maybe look like. So we have space for a 10-foot wide asphalt path here. We know that we have a swale along this roadway and we need to deal with stormwater. So maybe that is, I apologize for exaggerating in this picture, but maybe it's microbial It probably won't have that many flowers in it, but maybe we can do that there or treat that stormwater in a different way. So this is what that might look like on Raincliffe Road, which is great because it connects with this existing sidewalk down there, which we could likely widen to be as wide as this trail to make a consistent user experience. So the Sandosky option, our Alt 1, so you're downtown. This is this one right here corresponds with this picture here. So we kind of go from downtown up this hill. This number 2 spot looks like this. I'm going to show you that more detail in just a moment. Travel up Sandosky past the Railroad Museum. And then we have our crossing of 32. So a couple of the challenges we have here is pretty steep slopes. And we want to address that in a couple different ways. And we do need to cross 32. So we're spending a lot of time and attention looking at how we do want to safely do that. So this is that slope on Sandosky Road. Here's Main Street down here. The Railroad Museum is behind me. And so we're thinking, how can we achieve a trail connection here? So one solution that we're starting to look at is building a boardwalk. The cool thing about building a boardwalk is that we can kind of level it out and make the slope a little easier to deal with. So if I kind of jump back to my map here for a second, in my boardwalk, what I can probably do is travel along the edge of a slope here, kind of toward the back of the Rail Museum, do a switchback, come around, and then gradually go down the slope. So that's kind of the idea with this boardwalk, is that we can kind of make this slope a little bit more manageable for kids on bikes, maybe our parents and grandparents walking out here. So that kind of is what we're thinking there. For some people who want to be on the street, we're looking at maybe doing a shared lane on the downhill because you can kind of keep speed with vehicle cars. And on the uphill, providing a bike lane, because if you're going a little slower, you want to be in your own organized space. So that's kind of our option for Sandosky. And then at a point kind of adjacent to the Rail Museum, we would cross back over into a shared environment, more like a trail on the west side of Sandosky Road, and then come up to 32. So our other option is to kind of start on Main Street and go south and travel through the park. My one little concern here is it's a little bit hard to see West Friendship Road. That crossing right there is a little bit blind. And then we would go underneath of 32, up a driveway, across that bridge, which kind of looks like this not used by vehicles anymore bridge. And then we would be along 32 for this stretch right there. So when we start to evaluate these options, we like to I don't know, we're engineers, planners. We like matrices, matrices, the matrix. So we try to come up with these categories. How can I start to figure out how to make this decision? And so for this, we've kind of made this up in our process and started taking a look at, okay, well, if we look at private and special use properties, which of these two alternatives or alignments impact that the most or the least? And so my one check mark is like, not so great. My 3 check marks is like, good, points for this alignment. So we looked at private and special use property. We looked at steep slopes and maybe how we can mitigate that. We looked at noise. I mean, specifically, we're thinking about being along 32 and what that feels like. Perception of safety, we think that's really critical because again, the 8 to 80 population, we might have kids out there. We want to make sure this is a very safe trail. We're looking at scenery and views. What can we celebrate? What does the experience feel like? Sustainability and maintenance. So is what we're building something that we can maintain? And then for me, safety is paramount in everything that we do. So we're looking at crossings, the number of crossings, the complication involved with the crossing, the control of the crossing. So that seemed to be really important. So I'm not trying to sway you in any way. This is just something that we took a look at because we needed to start to, try to make decisions here. And so this is what we came up with, our criteria, but we really want to hear from you on what you think on these 2 alternatives. So now that I have gone through all of that in rapid fashion, we're going to go into breakout rooms so that we can have a discussion. So when we get into those breakout rooms, your facilitator is going to share with you a link in the chat that will take you to a story map. The story map is going to be live through the life of the project. And so you can go on that story map and you can kind of see everything that I just showed you. You can see the pictures, you can see the mapping, so you can push this out to your friends and family. But you're going to get that link and click on it in your room. And there are a few survey questions in there, but also we're just going to open it up for discussion and take notes about what your thoughts are. So for any of you who are watching us live, what we're going to do is Tim is going to actually put our story map on kind of an auto roll. And for those of you who don't get pushed into a breakout room because you're pushing live, then you'll just see this story map start to scroll. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pop into those breakout rooms, and we'll be in there for about 10 minutes. Eric and I will kind of pop in and out of your breakout rooms. Let us know if you need anything, but your facilitators are here to kind of help you through the technical details of clicking on the link, getting in there, and then facilitating discussion. All right, my facilitators and BMC people, did I miss anything before we go into these breakout rooms? All right.
Oh, good.
You're good to go.
Good to go. Okay, guys, let's hop in there. Don't forget to unmute to talk. So I think if you're on a phone, *6, or use your unmute button in the bottom left hand of your screen if you're on your Zoom. And everybody, let's go have a chat. See you in the rooms.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. And I just sent, so as a reminder, this is being recorded. We want to make sure that we have the ability to go back and review people's comments live if we need to for the project and we want to review things. And I just sent in the text or in the chat for this group, I sent a link to the story map. So I'm going to bring up the story map myself and share my screen. And so you can see where I am. Again, if you bring up this the story map on your own browser, if you are able to do that right now, you can click on this navigation bar on the Your Comments on section 1. And again, we're talking about, as Melissa mentioned, the Sykesville section of the trail, which is looking to connect Main Street with Freedom Park. And we have a survey that we'd like you to fill out if at all possible. And you don't have to do it now. You can do it later and at your own pace and your own time. But just wanted to go through it briefly. Of the several things we want to know, we'd like to know what you value most for connection between Sykesville and Freedom Park. There are a number of elements that we want you to consider. If an improved connection between Sykesville and Freedom Park is provided, would you be more likely to walk or bike to that connection instead of potentially driving to a trail from wherever you live? You might live in Sykesville or elsewhere. And then, what is the best option for connecting Maryland Route 32 with the entrance to Freedom Park? And this gets at there is an existing sidewalk along Raincliffe Rd, and this question is meant to get an idea of if you feel that widening the sidewalk into a multi-use pathway would be preferable, or if keeping the sidewalk would be sufficient. And then, last but not least, which connection alternative would you prefer? And those are just asking you. That's just asking you to give us an idea of which alternative that Melissa just went over in the group presentation that you would you prefer, which sounds at this point better to you. So I guess, are there any questions? Does anybody need a refresher, or does anybody have anything to discuss in general?
I do. Hi, everybody. This is Stacy. I actually have two comments, and they're about the one comment for each of the options. Is now a good time to mention them, or are we going to kind of break that down into segments in a second?
So if you have any comments about Sykesville, the Freedom Park, this is the best place to talk about that. And if you have any other comments or things to say related to the next section of the park or the trail, then we have another breakout room coming for that.
Okay, yep. Cool. So what was just shown to us, I have one comment is a general comment about, she's referring to I think she's calling it the train museum. Just for clarity's sake, and perhaps for any literature and anything that's posted publicly, that's the Little Sykes Railroad. It's just it's a ride for children and for the mayor, apparently, which I rode last Sunday. But it's not a museum, and it could be confused with our Gatehouse Museum. So I just wanted to clarify that when speaking, publicly and anything in writing, it should just really be referred to as the Little Sykes Railroad. And then I think people in town will know what that is. And then there's the boardwalk photo or rendering that was shown. I'm a bit, I think I know exactly where that is, but the reason why I'm questioning it is because its width would seemingly have to be cantilevered over an existing parking lot, which we refer to as, yes. So that sidewalk, as you know, is only 36 inches wide. And what's to the right of that is a safety fence, and that's there because there's a cliff that you drop off. So the rendering showing the boardwalk is confusing to me if it is, because I'm not sure where there's actually any point on Sandosky on that side of the road where we have that much width, except at the Little Sykes Rail yard, if you will. But before that, on the left, as you're coming up the hill, it's just a cliff.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think the topography of the area is something that we'd have to look into a little more in depth. This is kind of a concept level thought in terms of what could be possible here. And one of the purposes of the boardwalk would be to mitigate slope and elevation. And that's good to know and good to have a little more detail. And it's something that Melissa may be more aware of also. So I'm going to make sure that I take that back to her and also have to make sure that she looks at this part of the recording too, so that we can get a better idea and also get in touch with some more details on things like the safety fence, if that's something we're not aware of.
Yeah, if you go back that one picture, one slide back, it does show right there to the right as we're looking at it on the side opposite. It's like a foot and a half, 2 feet, and then it's gone. Yeah, and I know that there are some engineering solutions to that kind of slope, but I'm not fully familiar with those solutions, so I'll have to bring that back to Melissa. But I really appreciate that. Sure.
Yeah, if I can jump in, we have kicked around a couple different ideas. It could be a retaining wall It could be, like you said, a cantilever. There's different options available to us, but we haven't got that far into design to actually pick anything out at this point. So everything is still on the table at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And then my only other comment has to do with the alternative segment or alignment, I should say.
Are you talking about the MD32 alternative?
Yes, and the very first section of it in order to get over the river. Yep. So number 2 there, exactly. And again, like this is a huge concern for myself and anyone that's been advocating for a safe connection between South Branch Park and our Main Street. That pedestrian walkway on the bridge is barely wide enough for 2 people to walk shoulder to shoulder. Well, it just isn't actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so if this is the alignment that is opted for in the end or ultimately selected, is it again then too early to even speak about or speak to what that would entail? I mean, I know concept wise, like you guys are just like connecting 2 points, and I get that, and showing us where those footprints would go, and not so much how it's feasible. But again, this is. I talked to the town manager, Joe, about this earlier today. It's difficult for me to provide a preference if I don't really conceptualize the feasibility of it. And if I thought that choosing this alignment or preferring this alignment led to an actual increase in usability, right, of that for a pedestrian, whether they're be on a bike or on foot, or, you know, I assume that the horses are going to use the road in this case. But if that would include, and I know this just gets us to 30%, and I keep, you know, kind of stepping back every time I almost say what I want to say, but I'm curious if this alignment is one that would simply be not preferred because of the cost or the intensity of what would need to happen here to get over the bridge with something wide enough for what we're looking. So I don't know if that's a good question or a question at all.
Oh, definitely. As you can see, and the pathway of the bridge is too narrow to be really suitable for a multi-use pathway of the type that, you know, would be considered for the Greenway, or that would be ideal for the Greenway. And so, you know, for it to be a good connection, there would have to be an exploration of some kind of improvement to the bridge, but we're not quite there yet. And it's something that we'd have to coordinate with the State Highway Administration on, because I do believe that that's operated by MDOT, that bridge. So yeah, there's some moving parts, but you're absolutely correct. It's too narrow as is, and that connection would probably have to be looked at and being improved.
And Mayor, maybe you can help with this question that I have. That right where his cursor was just at, that Road A, would that be a viable option to come through town and take Road A over?
So I don't have my glasses on, and I usually can see a little bit better. Maybe if I,
He's got it on the screen, yeah.
Yeah.
One up.
So that Road A, I think what that's we kind of joke about that Road A. It's not really a road. It is more of a access shale in some places, not even hardscaped. And it runs along the rail. I think I'm in the right place. Is this? Yeah, let me.
I'm going to try to bring it up in another application.
That is running along the railroad, though. I am in the right place. Yeah, that's in front of like the farm and home and goes clear back along the river and along the railroad.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a better view of it. We don't have the topography or the aerial view available in the story map right now. So
I mean, it's not out of the question. It's just it's very industrial back there, and it's very rarely used by anyone or anything on wheels unless it's part of the farm and home business. They've got some storage sheds back there. And well, more than sheds, they're large barns and pole barns. But I don't know that it's out of the question. But that doesn't get us. So you're suggesting that we go under 32 that way. I see what you're saying.
Right, and that would avoid the little pedestrian bridge.
Yep. Yep.
And there would be, that there would be a lot of, I'm not very familiar with this street, but just from my understanding of the project so far, there would be a lot of, and even just this view here, there could be a lot of potential conflicts with, the commercial properties there, but you'd have to get into a lot of different considerations regarding the uses and how long and how they use the properties and the parcel boundaries and all that stuff. So there are things to look at, but it does looks pretty heavily used by those businesses at least.
Yeah, it's primarily just one business, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure,
Yeah.
you're welcome. I mean, I'd love to see that entire riverfront developed, but that's a different Oprah show.
In the chat, I'm going to drop a link to the story map itself. All right, so that's there in the chat now. So you can click on that link and it'll open up in a browser, or you can copy and paste it into a browser. And then I'm also going to share my screen so you can see what I'm seeing and we can talk through things. All right. So our main goal for these next 10 minutes is really to get your comments on the section 1, the Sykesville section. And you can, when you're in the comment map yourself, you can jump to that section right here labeled your comments on section 1. And it's got this little survey. And if you kind of click inside the survey, then you will be able to scroll down through it. And so feel free to do that if you haven't already. I'm also happy to walk through any of the proposed alignments that were discussed and we can have a conversation. I like conversations. I like the sound of my own voice, but not that much. Let's be honest. So it looks like there's really 3 of us in here that I got that right. 4. Yeah, 4 of us in here that maybe 5. Maybe I just can't count tonight. So, if you have any comments, I'm happy to hear them. Or if you just want to ask questions, we're taking notes on anything that any thoughts that you have. So that's the important thing is making sure that we capture all your thoughts.
Hey guys, this is Nathan joining you.
Hey, Nathan.
Hello.
I think everyone's just working through the survey right now. Melissa's here, everyone. Act busy. Quick.
Act like you're enjoying what you're doing. How are we doing, guys?
Good, Melissa. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well. Excited to be here tonight. Wouldn't want to be any other place. Did everybody get the link okay? I think Jack and Sharon, I don't know if I've met you guys before. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you.
Good. You have a very cute picture.
Oh, thank you. That's not me.
Is that it's little? Is that
It's a granddaughter.
aw?
I forget how to put my picture in there. I was just looking at that.
down
It
at the
doesn't-
bottom left, you have a video button.
Yeah.
There you
There I
are.
am. I think I like the other picture better.
We don't, Sharon.
Hi, Greta.
Hi. Good to see you.
Yes.
Greta, you look so official tonight with your headset.
You know, it's because I had so many technical difficulties with my personal laptop. I'm like, I'm just going to go to the work setup here. I know it'll work.
Love it. Love it.
Like the story of the last year and a half. Technical
Exactly.
difficulties on another Zoom call.
How you
I'm
doing,
finally
Jack?
just catching on.
Hey, Jack, how you doing?
Okay.
All right. So I think, mostly we'd love to get your feedback on those survey questions, but if you've got any questions, please ask them. Happy to explain anything else to you or answer any questions.
But only easy questions that we can answer with yes or no.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean-
no hard questions.
Yeah, the main issue on this part is really the crossing on 32, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the challenge, and it's kind of technical. We have a couple drawings that we've been working on for that crossing, and we're going to take a look at things like signal timings and kind of expand the sidewalk space, and then look at doing some traffic calming right there. So I think that is something that we'll definitely get into more detail when we get into the 30%. So this drawing right here was once upon a time when we were looking at, which way are we coming up 32? On which side will we be? How are we going to cross? So we were throwing everything at this drawing. But I think what we likely will do is try to just tighten up some of those angles so that you can't sweep around a right turn so quickly, and then give a little bit more of that queuing space for people who are biking, who have strollers, etc. So once we know which alignment we're going to be in, we can kind of design that space, that like nice space at the corner, so that you don't feel like you're standing right along the side of the roadway and everybody's zooming past you.
Yeah. And it looks like a little bit of refuge too in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. If we were coming up on that side, I think you're looking at the west side of 32 crossing Sandosky. There was an opportunity for refuge there, but if we're crossing across 32 on that north leg of the intersection, we have a lot going on right there. There's a lot of lanes. There's a bike lane. So not as much opportunity for the refuge, but definitely to look at the timing to cross the street and then the pinching to calm the traffic is what we'll be looking at.
Sure.
So in general, what are you guys thinking, Jack? What were you thinking on the Sandosky route or the 32 route? What were your thoughts?
I mean, when I've done this before, I've crossed on Sandusky. So I've usually come from the other direction from Howard County on up and then crossed to the west instead of going east. But there is a lot of traffic in that area. And as I remember, there's some kind of housing development on one side. I'm trying to remember if that's a corner that has, do you have any photographs of the actual intersection in that area?
Yeah, are you talking about those townhouses that are
Yeah, there are
on the corner
townhouses
there?
there and there's a gas station there, isn't there?
Yeah, the gas
Yeah, it's good.
station is on the town side and
Yeah.
yeah.
And then there's like a little convenience store.
Yeah, which I think is
Yeah.
for sale right now.
Might be.
Yeah, the only other thing is that crossing signals in Howard County, they pretty much can detect bicycles, but once you get north toward Carroll, you lose that capability. So unless there's some kind of a manual signal or they change a camera actuation on them, it doesn't work real well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for that trail, there's already that pedestrian there push button there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you think, Jack, you would ride on the road, or do you think that if we had a shared use path, you would be on the shared use path?
Looks like you're muted, Jack.
Unmute.
There we go.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how good the shared use path is.
And by good, do you mean the condition of it or the width of it?
The width and the number of other people that are on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the pathways in Columbia are crowded with everything from walkers to strollers to,
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what's on the path, I'd rather use a road.
Sure. Yeah. I think for me, like, I wouldn't mind riding the road on the downhill, but on the uphill, I would want an option.
Yeah, the other thing is with the roads, are these prescriptive right of way once you get north into this area too? They can't be widened, right?
The right of way.
Yeah.
We on the Raincliffe, we've got plenty of right of way, and it looks like we've got plenty of space really on Sandosky. We haven't done the survey yet. That's just based on GIS data. And then on the Sandosky portion, there's a lot of town-owned property that we can work with, which is nice. For 32, actually, the right of way goes for days because they're planning on widening 32. So that's a pretty huge right of way.
Yeah, they're already doing that in Howard County area.
Right. Yep.
So.
All right. Well, we just have 2 minutes left in here. So I'm going to check on the other room real quick, unless you guys have any other questions for me. All right. So you guys make sure that you answer those survey questions, and we're going to close out in just a couple of minutes.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, Sharon, I just wanted to point out for equestrian use, the idea here is to continue on and utilize the same path that we use today and probably will not intersect with any of the new trail.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the main room. If you are on your computer, do you see a screen that says report out? Fantastic. All right. So my room facilitators, what were some of the key themes that we heard in our rooms?
In ours, we had some conversations just about the shared use path and how that could be used by bikers, the width of it, would there be congestion on it? And as well as, we talked for a while about the crossing of 32 and obviously given the 32 is a really busy road, how that would work, safely and how to make sure the traffic is calmed and just sort of what it would look like. So those were kind of the big themes that we had. Charlene or anyone that was in our room. Anything else that you want to mention?
Seems like you covered it. I missed the beginning of your summary, though. I think we were still in the breakout room.
Okay, yeah, we're just talking about the use of the share path by bicyclists and how well that would work.
Great.
All right. How about my other room? Any key points and discussions?
I think the two major things that came up were on the Sandosky alignment alternative. We had a discussion about the slope adjacent to the Little Sykes Railway park and how it's very steep and there's a drop off and a safety fence today. Now that could present some challenges for the concept. They would have to be looked at or considered. And then the other one was looking at the Main Street Bridge and how it's very narrow right now for bicycles and pedestrians, and that usage of that alternative would have to be coupled with a consideration of widening that or somehow making it more hospitable for non-motorized users. And then we did talk a little bit about A street or A road on the north side of the South Branch Patapsco River, on the north side adjacent to Sykesville. It's currently not really improved to full standards, but it's being used by businesses on that street, and how that could potentially provide an alternative corridor to the MD32 alternative.
Oh, interesting. Okay, we'll take a look at that. All right. Any other closing thoughts from our BMC folks?
Not from my group. I think Colin covered it.
Good job, Colin. All right. So now we are going to move on, and Eric is going to cover section 2. Eric, I'll let you steal the screen.
Thanks, Melissa. Everybody hear me okay?
Yep. Sound good.
Great. See my screen. So like Melissa's portion of the presentation, there is some common space here. You'll note this green line, the first part or western end of the natural surface alignment. That's a common space between the entire alignment, primarily because there are some private properties here that kind of push us around, as Melissa was alluding to earlier. There's a treatment plant here. There's some homes up here, those sorts of things. So this first portion of the alignment, because of how tight it is in this section here, and then down a little further this way, there's not really too many options. There's an option here, of course, to switch, but outside of that, there's really not much that we can do to kind of move this around. So this part of the alignment is common. Also common on both is Henrington Road Bridge. The bridge site that was wiped out by Agnes in '72 is currently being evaluated for a replacement bridge to be able to provide some connectivity from the Carroll County side to the Howard County side of the park along the Henrington Road bridge abutments there. So you'll see that in the presentation as well. So we have two alternatives on the eastern end of the natural surface trail. We have what we're referring to as the Piney Run alternative. It's about 7.5 miles long, crosses Henrington Road in the middle here, and runs around the back side of League of Maryland Horsemen before coming down to Marriottsville Road. Alignment number 2, alternative 2, is what we're referring to as the South Branch alternative, because it sticks closer to the South Branch of the river. And it has some pretty views of the river, and kind of stays along that side. It's a little less in length, but just as pretty. It's got some cool stuff in it, which we'll show you in here in just a bit. I'm going to flip over to the story map so that we can go over some more of those details. The second portion of this, and you'll see this when you go over to the story map yourselves, it kind of flows out the same way. We're just going to use the exact same thing in the presentation here. It has a little bit of text on the section 2 that we're talking about here that you'll be able to see and kind of review as you move forward to it. Again, the Henderson Road Bridge is there. And then we're going to jump into a tour of the park itself. And so you'll see here a map with a bunch of pins on it that kind of run through and equate to some pictures that we took out in the field as we were investigating and ground truthing the alignments across the way. You'll see there's some nice vantage points. There's some private property. There's, great big old trees. There's all kinds of cool stuff in here. And, it's really neat. And I want to zoom in on some things to be able to show you what we're talking about. And so now I'm going to pop over to the comment map so that you can see some of the things that we discovered as we were kind of refining this alignment. There's some wetlands over here by Freedom Park that we need to be concerned with. We get really close to the water treatment plant as well. Again, that would, there's a pinch point here between this open field that, is right next to a house and the water treatment plant. And it's a very, very steep slope through here as well. So there's some concerns there that we identified. There's some some sensitive species concerns that are mostly on the other side of the river, but it does kind of track over onto this side as well, just a little bit. It's outside of the corridors that we've identified here, but that is one of the things that we looked at. We also, again, like I said, we had to worry about non-state park property. So you've got a couple of homes here. You've got the water treatment plant. You got the bow hunters location, the Heart of Maryland bow hunters. You also have League of Maryland horseman property and a few homes along the way that all kind of push that alignment around a little bit. We're working very hard again to create a sustainable trail design throughout the entire length of the alignment, either the Piney Run or the South Branch, and using varied terrain, looking for those experiences that all the trail users are looking for. Running through old pine forests, finding giant trees, archaeological sites. Those little things that make it a wonderful experience for you in the park. Now, again, we talked about matrices in the last portion of the presentation. You're about to see that again as well. I'd like to highlight some of the advantages and disadvantages of both of these alignments. On the Piney Run alternative, first of all, the terrain around Henryton Road may require an alignment to come fairly close to some non-state properties like this guy here and these folks over here, as well as the League of Maryland Horsemen. So that's something that we're concerned with. The steep slopes on the north and east side of the League are also very concerning. There is an old roadbed that we can use, but there's a big washout right over here where the road is just gone. So that's a little bit of a concern. The soil types down in this area here are a little soft. If anybody's been on the existing trails that are over there, you'll see that, that it gets pretty wide from just general use as things get wet and soft and muddy and all trail users kind of wander around those spaces because they don't want to get muddy and dirty and things. And so those soft soils are a little bit of a concern. The steep side slopes, they exist on both sides. So you hear me say that again. Crossing Henderson Road safely is a concern. There is, a straight stretch here that we could use, but Henryton is kind of curvy, all over. So it's hard to kind of put a crossing in here that's safe. The existing crossing that's up by the bow hunters is on a blind turn basically for the users coming from this direction. And so that's a little bit of a concern. Access to League of Maryland Horsemen, it does wind up a little bit flat up on top here, and there's an old roadbed that wanders up to the backside of League of Maryland Horsemen. And that's, that we want to be conscious of the fact that the park doesn't want to introduce, new access to a private property owner, and League of Maryland Horsemen don't want the entire public to be walking through their backyard. So that's a big concern. Lastly, it diverts from the Patapsco River, and this is the Patapsco Regional Greenway. So, that's it's a little bit of an issue. The advantages, I'm telling you, the view shed over on the Piney Run side of this is absolutely stunning. It is gorgeous. There's some old shed or building type thing over in this area here next to an old roadbed. There's a rock wall that back in there. That's an old property line. It's just really, really, really pretty. There's some old excavation sites along the way too. It's just really, really interesting. And as access to League of Maryland Horsemen is a disadvantage, it's also an advantage. Those folks in there want access to the trails because their horses need to be exercised, and that's something that they enjoy. Is that park setting, and so they do want a connection in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's an advantage as well on both sides. The South Branch alternative, again, we've got some steep slopes to concern with along Henryton Road. It doesn't really leave a whole lot of room for wiggling around if we come into something big that's causes you to have to redesign, like a major seep or big rock formation that can't be moved, those sorts of things. So those same steep side slopes are also a little bit of a concern for equestrian users because sometimes they they wind up with an exposure that, the user may not be comfortable with. A disadvantage, it doesn't have easy direct access to League of Maryland horsemen. Again, that's an advantage. It does not promote direct access to the backside of their property if we're using that South Branch side of things. There's no crossing of Henrington Road. We do cross the Henrington Hospital Road, but we cross it at the gate. And so you're not interacting with vehicular traffic where we cross the Henrington Road site. This side includes some other advantages in points of interest. You've got the old Henrington State Hospital Center. You've got the Henrington Trailhead and Spring across the street. Several overlooks of the South Branch, including, we cross over the Henrington Tunnel here twice. And that's over the tunnel. That's not actually down by the tracks. That's up above the tunnel. So you're looking out across the tracks in both spots. Back to the advantages, disadvantages thing, it does have access to Henrington or to the League of Maryland Horsemen via an existing trail there that it's one of the old transportation trails that they use currently to access the park. The one thing that all these maps doesn't identify is some concerns brought up by the park staff, and that is there's no staffing for the park for an amenity that's being added to the park. So we're going to add 7.5 miles of trail here, and we haven't addressed the common concern of where's everybody going to park? What happens when those folks park there and then leave their trash behind? What are the facilities that they're going to use? So those are all key considerations as we're moving forward that we've heard from park staff. And so we want you to hear that that's also on our mind. If you have some creative solutions, we'd love to hear those. So now I'm going to flip back over to the presentation, he said confidently, and talk about that matrix piece. So this just covers a lot of the things that I just went over. Steep slopes, private property. Again, one check is less positive than 3 checks. 3 checks is more positive. And this is just, again, something that we made up as we came along and kind of, with the experience of trail users in mind, walking the alignments with park staff, talking with the stakeholders and the advisory groups. We had a lot of input from all those folks, and so that's the results with the matrix here. And again, all this stuff is on the story map that you guys have been working with in the last breakout room, which you'll be doing again in just a second. So let's head that way, and if we're ready, Nathan.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get the story map scrolling. So for our live viewers, they will see in the main room the story map scrolling while we head off into breakout rooms. So looks like we've got that going. And Nathan, as you're ready.
All right, welcome back. And as Melissa mentioned, this time we'll be discussing the park section, or the Freedom Park to the McKeldin area of the Patapsco River Patapsco Valley State Park. And again, similar to the first section, we want to get your thoughts in the story map regarding the survey questions related to the park. And I'm going to send a link in the chat so that everybody can see that again, in case you don't already have it or you lost it. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see the survey. And this one is relatively brief. So we really want to get your thoughts on which alternative for the Greenway in this area you feel would be most appropriate. The Piney Run alternative, South Branch alternative, or there's an option if you like them both or you have no preference. So in addition, we discussed briefly a potential crossing for pedestrians and bicycles, or hikers over the old Henderson Road Bridge area over the South Branch Patapsco River. And just want to get an idea of if you'd support that kind of crossing or not, if that would be something that you'd find attractive. So in addition, once you've had it, and feel free to answer those later or do them now if you're so inclined, but we really want to, if you scroll down in the story map, and again, to get to this section of the story map, just to recap a little bit, you will click on your comments on section 2 in this top bar. You might have to scroll over a bit, so you might start up here, or you could just scroll all the way down the story map to this section. But once you get down to the survey, and you go a little further, you can see the comment map, and you can click on it to navigate and zoom in and out and check things out. And you saw a little bit of this through Eric, so it should look a little familiar. And what we'd like to get an idea of are, if you have any thoughts of these 3 different categories: points of interest, obstacles, or just general comments. So points of interest, obviously being things that might be interesting or that we should know about for the benefit of park users or Greenway users. Obstacles would be anything, obviously, that might present a challenge or something that we should watch out for and be aware of that we might not be aware of. And then general comments, something that isn't either of those things, but you want us to know about, or you want to make sure that we're aware of. So in order to comment, you would just click on one of these icons here and then click in the map in the appropriate spot. And once you click in the map, you actually have an opportunity to type in a comment as well. So you can explain what you're seeing or what you're trying to tell us. And you can also, if you're interested, click and see what other people have been saying on the map in different parts of the trail. So are there any questions so far? Or oh, one last thing, I'm sorry. We can discuss, but if you scroll down further, there is an option also to provide just text-based, not map-based comments. So if you have a comment that isn't particularly geographic in nature, or a general thing that you want to tell us, or have a question or anything, feel free to type it in that box at the end of the story map and click submit. So with that being said, and does anybody have any questions or anything they want to discuss about this section of the park, the section of the trail, or anything they need reminders of?
How do we do that?
Do you need assistance finding the right part of the story map?
No, I need to make comments.
Do you have access to the link that I sent in the chat?
I'm looking at the comments now. I would like to clarify a point that I heard that's not correct.
Okay.
And that is the League of Maryland Horsemen with 500 plus members do not want Piney Run as the trail. We want the South Branch route. We don't care about the access. We've been riding the trails for 40 years. We're okay with what we've got now, but we're concerned about people on the property where there is a danger to the novices that don't understand horses and other concerns.
Okay. Thanks. That's good to know and good clarification. So if you, any and all of your members who feel that way or who share that thought, that sentiment, I would encourage you to take a look at the survey and choose a different option. Choose one of the options. I guess you won't be particularly thrilled with Piney Run. And then if you have any general comments or want to register that in the general tab, you can mention that. And, certainly we'll keep in mind that the access for the League of Maryland Horsemen and the riders might not be an advantage in some cases.
Thank you.
Right, and this comment period is open through June 11th, so there's still plenty of time for you guys to spread the word and have everybody else look and comment on it as well.
Yep, exactly. Thanks, Keith.
So I have a question regarding the Henryton Road abutments relative to the proposed alignments between Freedom Park and McKeldin. It's like
Sure.
neither. So we're looking at the abutments, but neither of the options necessarily deliver the public towards the abutment. So
Correct.
I think it's going to be a great resource. But.
Okay. Yeah, good to hear your thoughts on that. But you're correct. The crossing or the abutment is not directly related to these alignments. It's something that, you know, if the South Branch alternative were selected and went ahead and there's an opportunity to connect, and Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but that could be, you know, something to consider there. But you're correct that there is no direct relationship to the trail. It's just something that would be beneficial for the park users, we feel. We want to get your thoughts on that. And it's therefore we're kind of asking that question as part of this process.
Colin, Maureen had another question in the chat box. Do the trails cross the railroad tracks? Perhaps you can fill us in on that.
Sure. My apologies. I did not see that.
I got it.
So it does not cross the railroad tracks. Actually, it does, but it goes above them. And there's the historic Henderson Rail Tunnel, which I think is really fascinating because it's I think it's among the oldest consistently used rail tunnels in the world. And the trail, if the South Branch alternative were selected, would actually go above it in two different spots. So it would go south here, or north, whichever way you're going, I suppose. But it would head south across that tunnel, again, over top of it. And it's vegetated and wooded. It's fairly wide, so it's actually kind of like a section of woods. And then it would come hook back around and then go back over the tunnel. So you'd have views of the rail bed in either direction, but you would not actually cross the tracks themselves. Was that the question? Did I address that?
Yes, you did.
Okay, thank you.
Now I have another one.
Sure.
It's there.
Let's see.
Have the landowners been notified of the proposed trail? If so, how? Because the ones I'm familiar with don't know about it.
Sorry about that. I apologize, first of all, for not having the chat up. It was not giving me a notification, so I apologize for that.
That's fine.
So no landowners have been notified directly because we're in the biggest landowner in this area, of course, is the park, the state. But there are, as we mentioned, private property owners who are in the vicinity, and particularly, in Sykesville, there are going to be private property owners who could be impacted or, would have an interest in the project to some degree. So as the project clears 30% design and there's a better idea or a certainty in terms of where the trail alignment actually will, should be based on the public input we've received and the technical constraints and the considerations, then Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there'd be more of a concerted effort to look at some of those properties that might have been missed. But in general, this effort is trying to capture proactive feedback from people who would have interest and are in the area.
That's correct, Colin. We don't want to reach out to people prematurely and have the alignment change, and then we're not impacting or not even coming near somebody, and we could have already got them all riled up for no reason. So we'd like to have the trail a little bit more defined before we reach out to people. Thank you, Mayor, if you're still here.
Yes, thank you.
I am. Thank you, guys. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Appreciate
All right,
it.
good deal. I'll catch the next one too. Good night.
Night.
Right.
And if there's any other questions, or has everybody had a chance to fill out the survey? Again, that would be very helpful because we're trying to get at least a sampling of what people's thoughts on this are, because as Melissa mentioned, there are definitely pros and cons to each alternative.
I've got one question.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking about this new proposal here for quite a while. Why was it? Why is it going through Carroll County instead of Howard County when there's already some a bunch of trails in Howard County?
Yes.
Is it just because it's harder and it's going to make it have trails on both sides? Or I'm just not familiar with the thinking of how why are we looking always in the Carroll County?
So with the Greenway plan, again, the Patapsco Valley Regional Greenway plan identified this side of the park on the Carroll County side as kind of the conceptual alignment for the Greenway. And actually,
Yeah.
I think that's a really good question. Keith, I am actually not incredibly familiar with why this side of the park was chosen initially. Do you have any idea, Keith?
I really don't know. I mean, like you said, we based the location on that original plan, and I'm not sure how they arrived at that when they were developing the original plan. So is a good question, Pete, but I'm not sure we have the answer to that. We can try to research it for you and get back to you, though.
Well, it's not crucial. I mean, I'm happy with it on either side. I just don't understand, I guess why the original plan. I know what you're talking about with the original plan. I've read all that, but I don't think it really says the logic as to why it's, north instead of south.
From a trail design perspective, my suspicion is that it was chosen based on the fact that most people like to do loops. There are already existing trails on the Howard County side. This would provide a loop for coming back on the Carroll County side. That would be my guess why it was chosen in the original writing.
Yeah, that sounds great. It's basically, creating additional trails instead of just improving the ones that are there. So no one's ever really said that in these meetings. So.
And I would also say to some degree a rationale behind that could be that this is it's a very beautiful section of the park that really there aren't many trails through. There are some, but there aren't many trails through, and it's kind of an opportunity to allow hikers and users to get a little more of a glimpse of this side of the park and have that opportunity to access it. But again, I don't know the details or the initial reasons why that side particularly was chosen.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I sent another one.
You can actually go ahead and ask us if you'd like.
I would love to. Okay. It's much easier for me. This appears to be a single trail from Sykesville to Marysville Road. Are there any loops where people can get off the trail safely? Because I patrol the park and I see people with young children and novice, and they can't go very far without being stressed because they don't have the knowledge. What is provided for those people?
No, that's a good question. You're right. There could be a lot of different user types, and some might not be as familiar or as accustomed to hiking through the woods or long distances and might need a break. We actually do have several kind of low volume access points that people can get onto and off of through the trail to the main roads if they need to. So there's access intermittently. So this wastewater treatment plant road is one if somebody really needed to get to the road. Obviously, that's very close to Freedom Park as well. Gorsuch Switch Road is definitely an option for people who wanted to hop off.
But where do they go then? There's nothing there. It's just a road up to another road. There's nothing there. Are you going to put something there?
Well, people would have to plan their own trip to some degree.
Oh.
And it's
Okay.
if they wanted to do the whole trail, I think there's some level of research before you go and make sure you know what you're getting into. But what I'm trying to point out is just that there are access points if people want to do one way, for example, and maybe they found an access somewhere and wanted to meet a relative or a friend at Freedom Park or get dropped off somewhere even, or actually bike from their home or nearby parking lot. I think there are a lot of ways to access that people could access the trail, and we're trying to keep that in mind. But right now, you bring up a good point because it is a long trail. It's 7.5 miles. And there is relatively limited access, but at the same time, and Eric, you feel free to jump in too, but my thought is that there will also it's going to be designed for bicyclists as well, for single track riders who, can cover a distance that's much greater without as much of a problem or without taking as much time as walking. So the user groups will be pretty diverse too.
I
Yeah,
have
the
another
only-
question.
The only loop that I see there from a that kind of perspective, it's out and back, obviously, for somebody who's only going to be able to do a mile or two. If the bridge does get built at Henrington Road, that would be, a way to shorten out the last mile or so, if they didn't want to go all the way down to Marriottsville. But yeah, it doesn't provide a stacked loop situation. There's just not enough terrain. There's not enough space based on the way the alignment gets pushed around because of the topography and the private property pieces.
And I will say that we haven't got to the point where we're talking about amenities and signage and things like that. But I would imagine that when you enter this trail, it'll be signed that it's a 7.5 mile long trail and that there's limited access points throughout the trail. So I think we would have to make people aware that, it is a long trail and there's not much opportunity to deviate from this trail.
Yeah, that's a good point, Keith, and appreciate you bringing that up, Maureen, because it is if somebody has limited information and is getting into the trail thinking that there's going to be an opportunity to connect sooner than they might anticipate, it'd be good for people to have that information at the site so they can make an informed decision.
I mean, there could even be mile markers on the trail that you've gone 1 mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, and that way well, I can turn around now if I really want to. If I can't go more than 2 miles, I'll go that first mile and then I'll turn around.
And there is a signage project that's happening throughout the park. Carson light posts are being placed everywhere with wayfinding portions so that should you have an emergency, you can report you are at post H07.
This is a meeting I'm at.
Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, so anyway, that signage will help as well. Those Carson light posts will help with wayfinding as well. So
I have another question. I wrote it. The novices on the trail, I think signage will help. Have you dealt with emergency rescue? Because I've seen things go on that side of the trails it's very difficult to get people in there for emergencies. Is that part of your scope or that's out of your scope of recommendation?
So we are working with the park directly. And the park superintendent is involved in the conversations pretty heavily, and they have emergency access has been brought up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but I think a lot of trails have emergency locators so that somebody could actually cite their location to emergency responders via a wayfinding marker of some sort, so that they know the response goes to the correct place.
Yeah, that'll be on those Carson light posts that I was just talking about. Each post has a specific code that emergency services will be aware of.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that helps with emergency for sure. And like I mentioned, there are access points, but yeah, it is a concern. It's something that we have talked to the park about.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, and with that, looks like we have about 1 minute. So if anybody has any final questions or comments, let me know. Otherwise, again, just a reminder, please visit the story map anytime and the story map will be open for quite a while, but between now and June 11th, as Keith mentioned, feel free to come back and provide your input.
And Joe, you're on the line. You have about 30 seconds if you want to say anything about the emergency access. You can say no.
I have one last question. I have 22 seconds.
Shoot.
There is increased vandalism in the park with scenic ruins and so forth. Part of your mapping is to take people to those sites. Is there any plans of how to educate the public on what they should?
All right. So this time around, we're obviously talking about the park section. So the goal here is to get your thoughts on the section 2 comments, and as well as beyond just the survey that we have here. Below that, in the story map, is our comment map, which you can interact with by clicking on it, and then you can zoom in and out. It may be easier to open it in another tab. So if you want to do that, you can click this little icon right here, and it'll pop open a second tab that has just the comment map in it. And again, then you can just zoom in and out. You can use your mouse wheel to roll in and out of that. And if you find a location where you want to add a comment, we're looking for comments about points of interest, obstacles, and just general things. So the way this works is you just click on the icon that you want to add, and then you come over to the map and you click again where you want to place that icon. And then once you do that, you're able to type in any comment that you have about it. So those are the two goals, the survey and the comment map. But I guess just like last time, let's talk about it. We can kind of go through and hear what you have to say about it. What are the thoughts on the two alignments? So with that, I will open the floor. To the sounds of crickets. There we go.
Tim, there was a comment. There was a comment made that one of the sections of it was pretty steep. Could you point out where that section is and how steep you're talking about?
I believe you're talking about alignment 1 here, the Piney Branch.
Yeah.
Or Piney Run. I believe Eric was talking about this backside here. This map doesn't have Melissa.
Yeah,
better here.
Yeah, that map doesn't have the topo on it, so it's a little harder to tell. There's nothing that we've done that's like not sustainable as far as the steepness of the trail. It just may be like slightly more challenging than what we try to do is we try to follow like one contour when we're designing the trail and just kind of like go up and down a little bit gradually. But there may be in some cases where we kind of come up to a draw where there's a creek. There's, to get like down and cross over, there's a couple steep spots. But for the most part, there's nothing that is like a really sheer drop off. And one of the things that we're working on after we select the preferred alignment is we kind of go in and figure out if we need to kind of shore up and grade a little bit, or if we need to kind of fill with some stone. So that's kind of like our next step is to make sure that we're not overly challenging. But there's nothing in here that's not scrambling up rocks on this trail. So
I mean, that could be exciting.
Unfortunately, because that's fun, right? That's
probably
fun.
not less accessible.
Yeah. But also with staying within those sustainable trail design practices, we try not to do anything that goes straight down the slope, because wherever water can run, it's just going to end up like creating a big gully out of our trail, and we'll have to create another alignment. So we try to make sure that we're, all of our water is going to sheet across our trail and not down our trail.
Melissa, the section that runs from the actual Piney Run River, where it connects there at Marysville Road, going up the hill to where it turns right and goes behind the League of Maryland Horsemen. What's the intended path coming up that hill? Is that to use the existing trail that's there that leads out of the League of Maryland Horsemen, or is there a different alternate that takes users off of the current trail that is established?
Yeah, our goal there, I think, was just to give a wide berth around the property. So to come north, but like I said, with a wide berth. So I think that's kind of why we jump up like that. We tried not to make any crossing of the driveway. So that's kind of why that path does that. So it's part topography and part kind of staying away from the property so that folks aren't drawn to wander through.
Yeah, I think my question more was around that trail that runs from the road, from Marysville Road.
Oh, okay.
Up to where it makes a right and then goes around the League of Maryland Horsemen. There's an existing trail there now that's heavily used. Yes, you're zooming into it. And I was just curious as to whether the intent is to repurpose that current trail, which is extremely rutted to your point, or to make another trail to divert away from that one.
It's going to be another trail. Yeah. Cause that one is pretty rutted out. So it's, to the point where that's for sure not sustainable. And we probably need to kind of close that one and start over, and make sure that we don't get that rutting on the new trail.
With any exits out leaving the League of Maryland Horsemen property, I think you have upwards of 100 to 120 horses that can be leaving that area at any given time over a long weekend. And I think we have to be really cognizant if that's the approach, and we do go with that alternate, that there's going to be some serious heavy trail usage from horses, from equines.
So is your preference, Greta, to have a connection to the trail? Like I guess I'm trying to figure out, do we have a clear connection? Do you prefer to not have a clear connection so that people don't wander into the property? Just what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're talking about with that League of Maryland Horsemen, the size of first of all, liability with people coming into camp with horses. And I apologize for any background noise that I might have right now. That's always a consideration. So we definitely want to get some type of barrier and have distance there. So we certainly want some type of a barrier, but yeah, I'm sorry, I was distracted there by the lawnmower.
Oh, you're fine.
Sharon, you want to add any comments about that? And currently, I know Eric had mentioned about the current crossing. That crossing of Henryton Road was built by horse people. I mean, because we didn't have an alternate there. So that is strictly a horse crossing. It's not an unofficial trail made by other trail users. That's our way out of the property.
That is a dangerous crossing, and it is a blind curve, and you really have to listen and go quickly. Right there. Yep. My other thought was, is there any possibility of taking it over closer to Marriottsville Road 2 and coming down the side of Marriottsville Road 2? Or is the topography would not allow that?
Yeah, I think its topography is not on our side right there. The contours that we're trying to stick to, some of them really jut up pretty far and go out of the park. So it's if we want to stay on that elevation and not have something too steep, it is kind of controlling us a little bit further away.
Okay.
I had a question for the RKK team.
Go for it.
Sure. We've met Melissa and some other folks we've spoken on the earlier planning committee meeting, and my particular interest here is to represent bow hunter interests, and I'm concerned not only with the two alternatives, but really the connection. And if we wanted to scroll back a little bit, that as Melissa and I appreciate you putting the bow hunting areas available earlier in your presentation and adding that text in earlier. But I'll just reiterate what I said before, that it would be difficult to draw a path through those hunting areas that was more disruptive to the practice of bow hunting. And I'm framing it this way just because we don't have a lot of time, but I'd like to ask the RKK team to what degree bow hunting concerns came into the planning of the trail, particularly from Freedom Park through to the two alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a concern because you are bringing it up, and then it's kind of a concern just with Joe and his team who manage the park and what's the purpose of the park and the mission of the park. So it's something that it's definitely something that we have to weigh out and figure out what we're going to do. And I think it's part of just the overall, what is the programming of the park? where is the intention of everything that's going on in the park? What is the intention of the regional greenway? And how do we all kind of kumbaya, come together and, come to an agreement or a happy medium, or figure out how we, is it something about rules and signage? Do we need to take a different path? I guess my curiosity is,
Sure.
If there are trails in other bow hunting areas throughout the park, why is this different?
In particular, it's different because of the north-south orientation of the paths as they head down and up and down and up. That would be north and south.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, if the path was straight, let's just say in the best of all possible worlds, a path went from somewhere near the water treatment plant, and as you're tracing that right there,
mm-hmm.
that's not so much of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is that, given some reasonably interesting calculations, about anywhere from 60 to 70% of the hunting areas will be within 70 yards of the trail.
Mm-hmm.
That's close. That's close. If you're trying to interact with an animal, that's close to try and be in a place and a time where that animal is undisturbed.
Mm-hmm.
And in the big piece we haven't really talked about is what's the expected traffic. And I think we can reasonably expect on a cool fall afternoon that we have probably several hundred transits through there. If you count from one end to the other as one transit or halfway through as two transits,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got a lot of people moving through there.
Yeah. So what time of day do you hunt?
Well, typically stuff happens before 9 o'clock, but in the Patapsco area,
mm-hmm.
the animals are usually active from 3 o'clock on in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you bring up a very interesting point. Timed use of the trail is a very interesting concept. And I just don't think, I don't know how it might be feasible. There might be certain days, but I guess the comments I've been getting when I've shown folks the trails and the options and the plan, and you guys have put a lot of work into it, but there's a very well-established bed that takes care of a lot of the sloping, and that earlier pictograph was very dramatic, and that's the railroad tracks. And the consistent question I get is, why isn't some of the trail at least interacting closely with the railroad tracks? And
yeah, that is the question. I mean, I'd love to, but when we have railroad tracks and we deal with the railroad companies, it's really that's really difficult because then we get into security issues and they want things to be completely fenced off, and that's just actually not possible in this area. So anything that brings users closer to the railroad, which is closer to the water, just becomes an access to the tracks, and we get, a definite no from the railroad company just because they're concerned that I think they're concerned more about the track than people. I mean, they're concerned about people getting hurt, but, there's definitely a security issue with people doing things to the tracks, derailing a train, opening up to security issues. So that, can really put a stop on a project.
Yeah, and I understand that. But in the Woodstock area,
mm-hmm.
Down near the railroad tracks, there is a very well-established bike trail right next to the railroad track.
Mm-hmm. And there are some, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's hard to imagine that there isn't some closer interaction possible. And
yeah, I think I'm kind of interested in exploring this timing thing a little bit more. and just maybe exploring, like when I'm in the other side of Patapsco and I'm hiking, I very rarely see anyone. I don't cross paths a lot with other people. So I'm kind of wondering, because we've got 7.5 miles of trail, are we really going to have enough consistent traffic that will disturb the deer? And will we have consistent traffic on the trail when you're actually actively hunting, right? Like within your perfect window. Because I think
It's a
before.
good question.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
can
good
jump in
question,
from
and
a
I
equestrian
think
perspective. That's yes, you will. We will be riding the trail. I can guarantee it from the League of Maryland Horsemen.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Well, you won't be riding. I mean, not at 5:30 in the evenings, but I mean, it will be around, and I just again, it's not so much the transiting through the area, it's the remaining in the area. That's the issue. And the way that the path is drawn, it's pretty much from one north branch to the south as it loops up and down and zigs up and down. Pretty much you're visible for quite a ways from both sides, and so that's a lot. And I guess the big thing to think about is that it's not so much deer that we're concerned about; it's providing an experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some practical concerns. I've never seen overbrowse conditions in any hunting area I've ever been in 25 years as I have in the Patapsco Park areas.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a serious issue for managing any kind of floral diversity, because there are places where the deer have just mowed stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to get any better. So I appreciate your comments. I'm just, if there's some way we can move this trail south and along the railroad track, that's a huge, and the more global picture here is that the McKeldin area is not a bow hunting area, and given the graphic, I think the graphic earlier in the presentation, which I really appreciate you showing, there's not a lot of other hunting areas in the park, and certainly as a percentage of the total park acreage. And so, as a matter of equity, there's a lot of other areas that trails can go through that won't have any impact or interaction with bow hunting. But this one's a big one. And I think we have a responsibility here to think about just the entire park, and not just this particular piece and in isolation. And if Ranger Joe and Ranger Rob are going to open up McKeldin to bow hunting, which I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen. Then that's a possibility. But the real issue here is that this is removing probably 30% of the bow hunting opportunities, certainly in the western half of the park. And I don't know how to be more to be less accurate for you than that. I don't think I'm doing my job for you and for everybody else here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something we need to consider, to discuss and understand and explore. And I mean, we are only going to 30% with this project, so it's not like we're building it tomorrow. So there's still time, I think, to do more studies and understand. But so I hear you and thank you. And this is all recorded, so your concerns will not go away. And we will still continue to analyze this and think about it and figure out how we can all kind of live in the world together. But I do have to close our breakout rooms and go back to the main room.
Thank you.
So So be sure to provide your comments on that map as you're able, and then push the map out to your friends and family. And I'm going to close out breakout rooms.
Melissa, there was a question being asked as we were booted out of our room.
Sorry.
Can you give Maureen just a couple of seconds to finish her question?
Of course, yeah.
Thank you.
It deals with vandalism of the scenic ruins throughout the park.
Okay.
It is going on presently, and will education of the public involving what they should do and not do regarding these sites that I have seen destruction involved.
Okay. All right. Well, we will definitely be mindful of that. I can appreciate that. I know our archaeologists were pretty excited about everything out there. So definitely want to make sure that we're preserving those. Just making a note here.
Thank you.
All right. So maybe just a quick, brief key takeaways as everyone comes back in the room and we get ready to just chat next steps and close out for the evening. So my facilitators, any key thoughts?
Yeah, we talked about basically two topics, just the Piney Run alignment and sort of the grade in that area and, you know, how steep it would be, as well as the potential use of an existing trail there, which doesn't seem like it's going to be possible. And then also League of Maryland Horsemen, if the Piney Run alternative was selected, just having that area being safe for them and their horses, and they have camps and stuff that they would just want to make sure that everybody using those trails and the people at League of Maryland Horsemen, everybody is kind of safe and taken care of. And please feel free to jump in if I misspoke there on any of that or missed anything. And then we also talked about some concerns that the bow hunters have, primarily about the alignment disturbing bow hunting based on the proximity of the alignment to hunting areas, and the potential for maybe the alignment to be further south, closer to the railroad tracks. You know, given that in this area of the park, there's concern that this could remove a significant amount of bow hunting potential for them. And, you know, and there was also a discussion about how much traffic there would be on the trails. Would there be consistent amount of traffic? What would that disruption look like, and the times of days and things that traffic would be on the trails and that the hunters would be out. So it was a good conversation.
Good. And I know we had a question come in the chat about how close the Piney Run alignment was on the east side to the League of American Horsemen. And Colin, thank you for measuring. It looks like it's 400 to 500 feet away. So we can definitely do a more accurate measurement as we get into 30%, but it's over 400 feet away. All right. And then how about our other room facilitators? Just a brief overview of what we discussed.
So we had a really good discussion, and we actually talked about quite a bit. So Keith, if you don't mind, just jump in if I gloss over something or forget. But initially, so we discussed the League of Maryland Horsemen, somebody who's here from that group just said that they don't believe that wanted to emphasize that they don't believe that the Pioneer Run alternative being proximate to the facility and having access would necessarily be an advantage, and that many wouldn't really want that access to any degree. We discussed the Henderson Road Bridge and its relation to the project, or the possibility for Henderson Road Bridge for pedestrians and non-motorized or hikers, and just discussed that it's not directly related to this project in terms of it's not, you know, depending on which alternative is selected, there's no idea to really connect it directly through this project, but that could be a possibility in the future, depending on how things go. We talked about, I thought this is an interesting question, how the north side of the south branch of the Patapsco River was initially chosen in the Greenway plan for this alignment and why not the southern side or the Carroll County, the Carroll, Howard County side. Sorry, got my counties mixed up there. The Howard County side. So why the Carroll County side, not the Howard County side? So we discussed that a bit in terms of some reasons for that they could potentially have been behind that decision. But in the end, we actually weren't 100% sure. So we're going to go look at that and refresh a little bit. And then we talked about emergency access. So what types of, I guess related topics, emergency access and how potentially less experienced hikers or users of the trail, they could get in there over their heads because it's a long trail and not a lot of official access points. And so we just discussed the signage that could be there to alert people to the length and the conditions, and also locators for emergency access or emergency responders. So the codes that could be set up so that people can, if they're in trouble and don't know quite where they are, say on the phone or through a device, identify where they are in the park so that responders would know how to reach them. So I'm thinking that's almost it. Keith, am I forgetting anything? I'm going to look back at the chat.
We discussed, briefly the vandalism right at the end, but I think you captured most of it. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you. So just briefly, our next steps, we're continuing to collect input until June 11th. So just like I said, spread this link out to the story map to your friends, your family, your neighbors, all of your groups. We want to collect as much information as we can so that we can continue to vet these alignments and make good decisions for all of the users that we will have out there. Then in June, July, we're going to go ahead and refine and select that alternative. We'll begin 30% design through September, and then we'll be coming back to you all with a 30% design presentation in September. What will happen after that is we'll collect all of your input, and that will go into a design memo that will travel with the 30% design in its lifespan on to the next stage. And so we'll have all of those considerations, things to think about, et cetera. So none of that information, none of what you shared is going to get lost as this travels through the process before it goes into construction, which we don't really know when that will be yet, right? Because it's dependent on funding and how this moves through into 100% design. So I just wanted to thank all of you for joining and sticking with us and having a great conversation. There's a lot at stake here. There's a lot of key players. There's a lot of different user types, and we want to make really good decisions for everyone. So if you are watching live or you are on the phone and couldn't unmute and chat with us, I just wanted to, one more time, if you're not looking at my screen, give you the ways to give us additional comments. So that is by emailing Keith. I know Keith loves it every time I read his email address. Email Keith at KKUCHAREK@baltometro.org, or visit our project website. That is publicinput.com/04267. Or if you love that phone and you want to leave us a voicemail, you can call us at 855-925-2801 and use extension 7772. And that is how you can continue to contact us, leave us messages, give us that great feedback so that we can really make great decisions moving into this 30% design. And with that, again, I just wanted to thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate your time so much. Keith, if you have any closing comments, or Eric, go ahead.
I'm sorry, one correction. The website, that is an O, not a zero. Oh,
that's an O.
Yes, that is a capital O.
Who does that to me?
publicinput.com/O.
04267. You know, if I said O, someone would probably think it was a zero.
I agree 100%. I just, when you said it, I went and checked, and zero will not get you there.
I have been clicking on it and not typing it. So thanks, Eric.
No problem.
All right. publicinput.com/O4267. Thanks, Eric. All right. Any closing comments, Keith or BMC staff?
We had a question that Nathan pointed out that will the public be notified of the selected alternative before September meeting?
Probably not. Well, it's going to be a reveal party. We're going to be celebrating.
The steering committee and the advisory committees will both get a chance to see them before we go public.
Yeah, they will. But we're not going. I don't think we're posting anything for review prior to the meeting. Like I said, we're going to be cracking bubbly on 30% design.
Thank you.
It'll be exciting. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us. Keith, anything else before we close out?
Nope, just a reminder that the comment period is open through June 11th, so spread the word. There's still plenty of time. Visit the website, keep spreading the word. That's all I have. Thank you all for coming out. Appreciate your input.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.